So Francis Clark is a friend and a mentor and someone that I really appreciate for all the things she does in the community, not just about native plants. And she gave me a bio and I forgot it, but it was too long anyway. I think Francis is an expert. If you have any doubts about that, I'm happy to debate or hear why you doubt that, but I think some of the coolest things that Francis has done locally has just donated hundreds of hours of her time, and one of the What's in Bloom. Who knows about Teton plants What's in Bloom blogs? That is the best local native resource. If someone moves here, like, what plant guide should I get? There's plenty of plant guides, they all have utility, but when it comes down to it, the level of detail, the quality of the photos, the different ways of looking at. If you have a question about it, a plant's a plant, go to What's in Bloom, Control F, search for that plant name, and you're probably going to find all the information you hope you find and more. In addition to publishing several books, which are limited production, very small, but shrubs, meadows, early spring,
and mountain meadows.
And mountain meadows with dry knolls on the way.
Yes.
Incredible resources. Thanks for being here, Francis. Yeah, you can click here or press that button. Try it out, let me know.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I will just say briefly, I have gone from peonies to sedges in my career. I started out in botanical gardens, and one of the most luscious ones was Longwood Gardens, where I spent about 2 years in that area. And then I went to the Wildflower Society up in New England, which has been promoting native plants for over 100 years, thank you very much. And then last 14 years I've been here, and I've been reveling in the native plants that we have here. I want to thank Morgan and Liz for bringing us all together and all the work that the Conservation District has brought to this event to have you all here. So, moving right in, I meant to talk to you about what's a native plant, why are they important, talk specifically about the Teton native plant list, which I spent several months with a broken foot during COVID working on that, and then the hopeful usefulness of this list. Briefly, what is a native plant? It's essentially a plant that was here before the white men came. Frankly, it's naturally occurring, and it was before European arrival. Why are those plants important? Because, well, first of all, we all know that plants are really the basis of all life. We wouldn't have the mammals, the birds, the insects, the people here without the plants one way or the other. And also, these plants are often the center of really unknown interdependencies. Context matters. I've already talked a bit about the importance of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. This is where we're right in this smack dab in the middle of this ecosystem. And as was said earlier, this is why it's important, I think, others think, to try to maintain this biodiversity in and around it. Many of us live and work within very close to the border. And the bees are flying around back and forth, the seeds are flying back and forth as well. And so part of what we're doing here can hopefully maintain the integrity between these two systems. A bee can fly 1.5 miles, maybe carrying the pollen from a non-native variety of a genus over to the native. What's going to happen to that? We don't know. Plants are also really positive. I mean, we're also in a little bit of a doom and gloom in some ways. So we work on something that's really cool. And there's a whole new movement out there that's crossing the country by Doug Talame, the Xerces Society, and really looking into how we can reduce our impact to the environment by creating reserves and corridors for the small creatures, such as the native birds and the insects. And Talame is going into some really cool information with his grad students. Thank you, all grad students. 90% of our non-native plants cannot be used by our plant-eating insects. They can't chew on them. Bugs of all kinds, all different levels of stages, eat their plants. And many of the species are particular to their host plants. So without our native plants, we don't have our native insects. Bugs need natives. Birds, baby birds eat insects, particularly the bugs in the springtime, the proteins and the fats. One of the research students found out that a chickadee will eat 300 caterpillars a day when they're a youngster. Now, we're not seeing those caterpillars. They're out there. Your client doesn't have to get creeped out by caterpillars, but they're there. And those birds that they do like need those in order to grow up. Hummingbirds. Hummingbirds depend on all these three beautiful plants throughout the season. The nectar of a hummingbird plant is different than one that's bee pollinated. And more about birds. Migrating birds, whether our bluebirds, our Swainson's thrush, our western tanager, all need these berries. These native berries have different formula in their fats and lipids. So they need them to be able to get down south with full enough energy. And guess what? Our native plants know how to grow here. They're adapted here. They know our mountain climate. They know the soils are usually low in nutrients. They know how to sort of squish in and take advantage of the mycorrhizal fungi that's in those soils. And they interact with the pollinators. They make their own seeds. I have plants that I've seeded in with geraniums and golden eyes and some of those asters. They're just seeding into my garden because they get pollinated and they know how to grow here. For water. We're all concerned about our water. It's important to us. We're a sole source aquifer here. All these streams are mingling together under our, in our valley. And so we're concerned about keeping that clean and plentiful. Well, growing native plants can reduce those fertilizers, water, and use of pesticides, and we have a beautiful garden. And guess what? Plants are beautiful. And there's a whole bunch of them out there to choose from. We just have to figure out how the heck to grow them and get them to you. I mean, look at the plants that are growing in sagebrush steppe. Which ones can we keep with our clients who are just north of town here, or up in the buttes, those dry, sunny areas? How about those aspen stands? The plants are a little bit more adapted to a little bit of shade and moisture, slightly richer soils. Look at those plants. Can't get those into our gardens. Go higher into the Fork Meadows in the summertime. I get to hike up there. I can still do it. And wow, can't we adapt these down to a slightly lower elevation and put them into our gardens? Slopes around Jackson Hole. Lots of shrubs out there. They may not look much in the summertime, but pop. Look at those, that full color. Isn't that cool to have? And just brightens up those full landscapes. So, I'm going to talk about the native plant list that I worked on. So let me tell you a little bit about who it's for. It's very important for habitat restoration. Why do we know it's really native here? That was one of the main things I needed to find out. There's a lot of restoration work going on sagebrush steppes for the Park Service, 35 acres this past summer, which is one. They've done a terrific job along the park pathways using natives. So they need to know what's truly native. For cultivated landscapes, like my garden here, in the picture, but along the pathways that run by my house, the roadsides and the local parks, it doesn't have to be 100% native. 70% is pretty good. And guess what? Your client doesn't have to know that it's actually native if they seem to think that it doesn't matter. You just slip it in there. That's what the Ecological Landscaping Association used to do. They just said, you know, we don't have to tell them. And then they'll go, oh, what's that? And they'll say, oh, that's a beautiful aster, that's native. So again, there's a way of using these to enhance the biodiversity of Jackson Hole and beyond. So how do we know they're native? Well, one of the best, most definitive sources is that it was collected in Teton County. This has been going on for years. People of all sorts have been carrying presses around, putting plants in them, making various specimens, indicating where they were found, and then storing them in Bavaria, the Rocky Mountain area down in, I can't remember where it is, Land or Laramie, has thousands of these specimens. And they have a terrific list of what's here in Teton County, what has been found. Now, they didn't find everything, but they found a lot. And then there's a whole list of sources. I'm not going to go into them, but they're from our Dorn, where it's from different botanical surveys that were done. And again, I went through these to check and double check to see what was likely to be here. It's not always an easy call. This is blanket flower, it's a lot of seed mixes. There's cultivars of this fancy thing. We'd love to have it in our gardens. There's a waterberry specimen of it. This is a beautiful plant, so you think people will be collecting it correctly. But if you look at the label on it, there's been only one. And it's only was found at the Kelly Post Office in 1977. It doesn't seem to be thriving there since. So my hunch is that it's not native to Teton County. Okay, naturally occurring in its own right, not. Another one is Asclepias, a wonderfully biodiverse, attractive plant. Is it native to Teton County itself? South and west and north, yes, but no, again, no samples of this that are from disturbed sites. And so that indicates to me that this is not native. and also just doesn't do well. It comes along for a year or two or so, but it really hasn't been doing anything. And don't worry about those monarchs. We don't have very many monarchs here to begin with. Gumweed, don't know. It's been found now all along our park pathways. It's a beautiful plant for the fall. Apparently it's got some fire resistance to it. It's a great plant, but is it truly native? Hard for me to know. Okay, so we try to indicate whether we do or not. Nomenclature is difficult. We all know those botanical names keep changing their names. The scientists, the taxonomists keep twiddling with them. The families change too. It's hard, but it is like a legal name. You've got that legal name and you can do more research with it. Unlike a common name, which is a nickname. Everybody's got their local nickname, okay? So when you can have that Latin name to do any of your research, and USDA, Flora, North America are good sites. I cross-referenced these in the big long list that Morgan was talking about. Growing needs. Again, this is what many of you need and want in order to be able to do the restoration or for your landscaping. I tried to synthesize this from some other people's work, and also talking about the growth requirements, all part of this planning. And again, this is where you guys have to share your experience, because growing plants here is often very different than they are elsewhere. So share that experience. Garden values, again, trying to list what type of plant it is, so you can look up, you want a shrub, you want a tree, what's average plant size, again, it varies. And then the bloom color, the bloom timing, the fruit, the fall color, all these things are important in design. And then the wildlife values, we try to dig into some of these. The U.S. Forest Service has a lot of information. Pollinators, the Xerces Society. For birds, you have the Audubon, Cornell, thrushes, love the mountain ash. Bear attraction. Well, this time you can just sometimes see it for yourself. And this is a big important thing in landscaping here around Jackson Hole. And then deer resistant. Well, deer will eat a plant if they're hungry enough. Fire-wise, this is a very important subject right now for big reasons. It's not just about the species though. Many states have put out different lists of plant species, that's important, but it really is about the structures, the hazards of those structures, the closeness, spacing, all those things are really part of this fire-wise difficulty that we have to look at. Plant sources. I did this back in 2020. Many of you have contributed to those sources over time. But what it does indicate is that other people are selling them. They know how to grow them. They think they can sell. And so that's a good trigger to you all to say, oh, somebody up there is doing it, somebody over there is doing it, maybe I can too. And maybe there's information about how to do it. Native sources matter. I'm just going to do this briefly. Big leaf lupin. People love the idea this is one of those fancy cultivars that's out there. But we have two native lupin varieties here, but those cultivars are from a whole different variety in northwest United States. And that's the thing that's spreading into people's gardens like this. It just is overwhelming. Those are the ones that are down along the coast of Maine and the East Coast. And they're spread around the world. This is one of the worst weeds in Europe. And so these cultivars matter. And again, the origin was in northwest United States, and look where it's gone. So we need to think about this. And the whole issue of dativars, the research on that is indicating that some are great for biodiversity, some reduce biodiversity. Again, this is some of the research that Talony and others are doing. Mount Cuba Center in Delaware is one of these sites for this kind of research. Propagation information, USDA has some good sources on nonprofits, botanical gardens. I was with the Native Plant Trust. As I said, they've been propagating for 50 to 75 years, sharing their information with East Coast plants. But botanical gardens like Denver is another one to be looking to. I know it's not always easy. There are complicated triggers to germination. They have deep tap roots. They take time to show up. And then we have this issue of ecotype access. If you really want to get a plant that's adapted to here. And that will be, hopefully, will part of the discussion and part of sharing your expertise here. And one thing I put out, there's a whole bunch of cultivars and species out there, mountain ashes and maples, that are in the nurseries, but they're not our native plants. Can't we grow the native plant form here and have that available instead of the one from the Mountain National Bureau or the fancy brilliance of our amelanchiers, and make sure our bugs and insects can enjoy them as well as the birds. As Morgan said, the list isn't easy that I did at the top. I think it goes down 1,000 and 1,200 rows down and about 36 columns across. There's a lot of information in there. It needs to be synthesized. Even Morgan's wonderful brain hasn't quite done it yet. But again, it's there for the synthesis. And again, these plant aid sources already, Morgan's talked about the list they already had and the wonderful resource guide that Karen Cano, where is she up there, has worked on so well with TNC and Turner Bloom. So those are good resources for the moment. Opportunities. Morgan's talked about these, but what I see already is some public projects coming online. We have downtown Wilson, we have Stilson, we have Carnes Meadow, and we have the visitor center. They're all talking about native plants. And these are just a few folks, okay? So opportunities are here. So what I'm gonna end on is go take a hike, gang. Take a lot of hikes. Get out there and take a look at where the plants are growing, what they need, when they're growing. Look at those extraordinary combinations. Think about them in your landscape designs. Figure out which ones you may be able to grow. They're not easy, I know, but this is going to be your inspiration and your stimulation to try to keep our valley beautiful with our native plants. Thank you.